All right, so we got a few minutes, so I'm going to teach just a little bit here, and then we'll pray and get out of here. All right, so research tells us that average person has between 12,000 to 50,000 thoughts per day. Okay, between 12,000 to 50,000. But believe it or not, a majority of people's thoughts are spent on things like worry and fear. That's a 5, obviously. And just kidding. So are spent on things like worry, fear. Ever run through a conversation that you had earlier in the day like 12 times in your head till you finally get it right what you should have said to them? And until they finally see your point of view, even though they're not in the room anymore. So a lot of people do that. A lot of people spend a lot of their thinking energy on things that are not really productive, right? So if you look at your own life, there's probably a lot of thoughts in any given day that if you could have used those in a different direction, you might have been more fruitful that day, and there might have been more productivity. Did you have a question?
I just had a thought about that.
Yeah, well, that's good.
How does anybody know how many thoughts I've had in a day?
Well,
I mean, what would be their basis for coming up with this number? I don't want to worry about it.
yeah.
Any fear.
So I believe the way that they would research this is you have now they have the ability to connect you to electric diodes, because the brain is essentially an electrical battery almost. It runs on electricity. And so a lot of brain science that has emerged in the last 10 years is because of that ability now that we can take a test subject, put them connected to a few things, and we have software now that can map where the electricity is coming from in that individual. And so in terms of the brain, you put them in several places, and the software will map where the electricity is coming from and how much and when. And so if the area that's responsible for thought, if you connect somebody up, you can see how many times impulses are going through, and they can calculate it that way. But that's why they give you the range, is because depending on what you're doing in any given day, you may have more or you may have less. And it depends sometimes on what kind of work you have to do. Maybe somebody that's doing manual labor, they go into a zone and they're not really thinking as much, versus somebody that interacts with people on a daily basis, and that kind of keeps you on your toes, and you got to think about things, or maybe in a day you have a problem, right? That sometimes we're more prone to think when we've got issues facing us, as opposed to when we're on vacation. Maybe we just a little more sit back and receive and just enjoy. So different things affect that. But I guess what I want you to see here in the beginning is the choices that we make on what we do with these. Often we just, if we're not careful, if we're not focused on doing this the right way, and we just take what comes, then your thought life could be all over the place, and your thought life could be filled with all kinds of things that are eating up your time and your thought energy, but not producing much benefit, right? And so emotional intelligence is a broad category, but one of the things is learning to be more reflective on how you spend your thinking, right? To think about thinking. Anybody know what we call that? In fact, as far as we know, we're the only creatures that can do that. And it tends to be one of the things, at least that we think, separates us from the animal world, is that animals don't have the ability to think about their thinking, right? Anybody know what the word is for thinking about your thinking? That is correct. Metacognition, right? Thinking about your thinking, okay? And so often we spend it in things that are trivial, right? So obviously you can't think about highly stressful, serious academic things all the time, but at the same time, these things need to be checked. some, and you need to challenge it. In fact, the Bible says, Paul says, I bring down every thought that exalts itself against the name of Christ, right? That Paul teaches that you can challenge thoughts, right? This is one thing that new believers have to realize, is that a thought that emerges is not necessarily you, right? It is what you do with the thought. The old illustration, the bird can hit you in the head, and that's the bird's fault. But if he makes a nest on your head, that's your fault. And so, same thing with thoughts, that they come. Now, as we mature in the Lord, we begin to deal with those things, and the quicker you deal with it, the more you can live a productive life. So, sinful thoughts that enter, you have to learn to fight that, and that is not being tempted is not the definition of being sinful, right? And the Bible says even Jesus was tempted, right, out in the wilderness. So being tempted is not the definition of being sinful, right? Okay? All right, so I'm going to give you a couple. So that's one thing, to think about your thinking. I'm going to give you some, get out a piece of paper. I'll give you, just to warm up your brain. It's kind of cold in here. So don't yell out the answers. Tasha, don't cheat off your mom. I saw you looking at her paper. Just kidding. All right, so what I'm going to do is, these are not hard, but you do got to think about it a little bit, just to warm up your brain. So when you get the answer, don't tell anyone, just write it down privately, right? All right. So here's the first one. John texts Lisa. Word problems. All right. Lisa texts Peter. Okay. So John texts Lisa. Lisa texts Peter. Okay. John is a minor. Peter is not. Did a minor text an adult? You have three choices. A, yes. B is no. And C, there's not enough info. To tell. Okay. John texts Lisa. Lisa texts Peter. John is a minor. Peter is not. Did a minor text an adult? Yes, no, or not enough information to tell. And we'll start slowly. Get us warmed up. Anybody gotten their answer yet? Anybody still thinking about it? Harold, are you still thinking about it? Okay. You know what texting is, right? This young generation, sometimes you got to explain stuff to them, So we're just here for Tuesday, so if you want to go ahead and... just get, no, the class is waiting on you. I'm fine. So don't tell me. Just, you got 5 seconds. Write one down. Yeah, you can write it. Just as long as you know, you're not turning it in. So just as long as you know what your answer was. All right, so how many people responded with A? How many people responded with B? How many people responded with C? Harold, you didn't raise your hand at all.
How many didn't respond at all? D, no response.
Take the answer that's on.
She could have been wishful comment.
None of the above. No. I'll take the answer that's not on there.
All right, so...
For 50,000 thoughts for the day.
All right, exactly. All right, so everyone answered C, right? Okay. So what if I told you that the answer was A? Would that surprise you? That everyone in the room got it wrong? All right, so what you have to do to solve a question like this is to be hypothetical. Imagine if Lisa is an adult. What would that mean? That would mean that John texted Lisa, and so a minor did text an adult. But what if Lisa is a minor? That would mean she texted Peter, who is an adult. So either way, whether Lisa is a minor or an adult, this occurred, right? So it's something to think about. And most people get that wrong. I mean, that was the reason I told you, is because most people are going to get that wrong.
But we still don't have enough information.
No, because if she's an adult, then John texted her, and so a minor was texting an adult. But if she's a minor, then she texted Peter. So either whether she was an adult or a minor, it took place.
That's why.
Hey, I know you only needed one, just one good one. All right, so
We failed to get it.
yeah, so that's good. At least it works.
You didn't even step in.
All right, so Ariel won that one. She was the only one that didn't get it wrong. All right,
She abstained from answering.
all right, we'll do one more. This one may be harder for me because you guys might be onto my tricks now. All right. That one was a word problem. We'll do some math for this one. All right, I'm feeding off the energy here. All right. All right, you've got a shirt and a tie. I know. Costs $55. Okay, shirt and a tie costs $55. The shirt
Wow, hope not. I hope not.
The shirt is $50 more than the tie. How much does the tie cost?
Do I have to factor in taxes? Is that way?
No, there's no tax. No. So it's just a simple question. The shirt and tie cost $55 total, right, for the two. The shirt is $50 more than the tie. How much did the tie cost?
Well, 5 gets up to that. Oh, no? We're not discussing it?
No, yeah, no, the same rules as before. You got to write your own answer. Oh my goodness, what is going on here?
There are choices for answers.
Yeah,
No, there are no choices on this one.
Is it the same shirt?
Yeah, so there's nothing tricky like that. There's nothing. It's just shirt and tie. Yeah, no sales tax, nothing like that. Shirt and tie cost $55. This one might even be easier than the last one. The shirt is $50 more than the tie. So you got to come up with.
Second guess ourselves.
So you got to come up with. Well, it might be an easier one. I don't know. Some people do better with math. Some people do better with word problems.
Seems too obvious. Like it wouldn't be that easy.
Could do what Ariel did and just not have an answer and win by default.
That'll be my turn now.
Or maybe she didn't win. She just lost less.
Is it buy one, get one free or anything like that?
Nope, nothing. Everything you need to know is on the board. Everything you need to know is on the board.
Up in the box or anything like that. Okay, now.
I'll give you another 30 seconds. Anybody have an answer? Don't yell out loud. I just want to see who has an answer.
It's gonna be wrong, obviously.
Well, that's fine, but
I'm just going with face value here.
okay. It may not be wrong. Maybe this one's just easier. Maybe you were just challenged from the first one, and so you're on defense. All right. So
I'll just, you mean what time?
Yeah.
I've got a calculator if you. The square root of pi is. All right. So.
This is above my head and below my feet.
Okay.
I just have the obvious.
You guys are making this like this is rocket science. But every one of you have bought more than one thing at the store before, right? Everybody's bought. If you've bought at least 2 things at the store before, raise your hand. Ariel? Good, okay. All right.
Especially at Easter season, the tie comes with the shirt.
Oh, my goodness. All right, so,
Let me ask you a question.
yes,
So you're saying the shirt is $50 more than the tie.
that is correct.
Is that saying the shirt costs $50?
Well, that's up for you guys to tell me. All right. So what answers do we have? I won't tell you who's right and who's wrong yet, but I want to see what answers we have. Arrow, did you get an answer? $5?
I had 2 answers. I had the tie is $50 less than the shirt, and it's 5.
5. Trying to be creative. Yes, I see it. Do you have an answer?
I'll go with 5. I know that's wrong, but
Charles, do you have an answer?
No, I was heading in the same direction.
I go with 5.
Trying to play on words and see if it's.
Yeah.
There's an actual math
I
answer.
just said 5.
Tasha,
I don't have an answer.
Leah.
I don't either. I know.
They're pulling.
All right, so let's think through it then. We'll take your answer. The most common one was 5, right? So if the tie is 5 and the shirt is $50 more than the tie, then how much in that example would the shirt be? 55. But then the tie then would be 5, you said, which would make the total 60, which is not right. Right? So the tie would have to be $2.50. Then if the shirt is $50 more than that, that means the shirt is $52.50. And you add those up and you get 55.
Where'd you get those numbers from?
Well, just to take your answer, if it was 5 and the shirt was $50 more than that, that means the shirt's 55. But then you still have the tie, which was 5, you said. And so that means your total of the combined would be 60, which is not right. It needs to add to 55. Right. Okay.
So how's it done now?
5250 plus 250.
No.
Well, if somebody wanted to, I guess what you could do is subtract 50 and then divide it by 2.
I still don't get it.
I know.
I do.
What don't you get? Okay.
Yeah.
So just take this. The shirt was $52.50. The tie was $2.50. The shirt was $50 more than that. So that and it comes to 55. What part don't you get?
Where'd you pull those numbers from?
Well, that's just the answer.
He just-
No, that's the answer. I mean, it's not. I didn't guess. That's the answer. That's where I got the numbers from.
Well, I think where
That's
you
the answer.
started from, where you started from to, rationalize that.
You might have to do a process.
Well, so if you wanted to rationalize it, you would take, if you wanted to work through it, like in your mind, your initial answer was $5. So you would do what I just did and say, okay, if I want to test that to see if it's right, and I'm saying the tie costs $5, then what I know is that the shirt costs $50 more than that. So $50 more than 5 is 55. So that would mean, according to my hypothetical, that my shirt would be 55, and my tie was 5 because that's where I started. Right. So that can't be right. That's why the $5 is not right. The tie has to cost $2.50.
Remember the $50 is not a set price of the shirt.
It just
means
says
that the
50
shirt
more.
It's a
costs
combined.
$50 more.
Yeah.
So whatever the tie costs, you have to add
Yeah.
that price.
5 is 55 to
No.
me.
50
Then that gives you how much the shirt is by itself. And then you have to add in how much the tie was. The tie was 50. I mean, the tie was 5, right?
If it hasn't got in by now, it's not gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what you're doing? You're just taking and adding 50 to the cost of the tie. But in fact, the shirt was $50 more than the cost of the tie. So if the tie was $250, then the shirt had to be $52.
Well, how did you know it was 250?
Well, that's the answer.
You know, if you don't get it, I'm with you, Leah.
Because what you would do, because, hey, I just don't get it is not a very good answer in an academic setting. No, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying that's not a very
We need to find
healthy answer. I think, because sometimes we shut down, and instead of like actually receiving it, but what you have to do is, if you think your answer is 5, you test it, is the whole point of this. And when you test 5, you come up with a combined total of 60, and so it can't be right. And then you go back in and say, okay, if I plug 5 into the price of the tie, it gives me a total of 60, then 5 can't be right. So I go back in and try something else, knowing that 5 gave me an answer that was too high. And so the purpose of both of these, whether we understand them or not, or whether we got them at first or not, is that often the better way to come up with an answer is to test your answer and not to just assume. Because the reason that you got both of them wrong was you took the first obvious answer and assumed, when if you had just taken either of those answers and plugged them back into the problem to confirm, you would have immediately realized that your answer was wrong, right? And then you would have thought about it a little more clearly, right? And so the idea behind this is that in our thinking, we make a lot of assumptions and we don't even realize it, right? That most of you on that very first one probably thought you were right. And especially when everyone else in the room raised their hand, you probably felt pretty affirmed in that, right? Yeah. And so we often make assumptions based on what is presented to us without taking the second step of going back in and seeing if our answer is right by applying the answer. All right. Charles, did you have a question?
Yeah, so Razor's theory is not correct. The simplest possible answer is not always the solution.
Yeah, it's not always. Yeah, and talking about creation and different things like that. It's not always. And that we often confuse ourselves, and this often leads to like pack theory. Have you ever seen that? That like, people just do it because everybody else is doing it. And so they take the obvious assumption, and it's often reinforced because we see other people doing it. And on this math one, I intentionally threw some things out there that I hoped would throw you off. Like, oh, well, maybe this one is just easier, and that's why, and you guys are throwing yourself off. And little things like that I threw out there just to throw you off, to make the suggestion that maybe the easy answer was right. And if you noticed on the first one, I said, let's just start with an easy one just to get you warmed up, right? So hopefully that would throw you off and not be...
We know it's not $5, but he knew it.
And so the idea is that you can be convinced about something and be totally wrong, right? That you can be absolutely convinced about something and be completely wrong. And so particularly this applies to word problems. But what about relationships with people? Yeah, right. Well, Juan will not see this tape, I promise you.
Don't you hate it when you argue your point and then you find out you're wrong and you're just like, oh, man.
And so it teaches you to be humble a little bit.
I'm glad I just
Right.
drowned.
Well, it teaches you to be humble a little bit in things, that when somebody leads you through something that you thought you were absolutely sure about, but then it actually wasn't right, and you guys were suspicious only because I was up here asking the question. You know what I'm saying? If it was not in that context and you saw this, you might not have even been nearly as suspicious as you were. You might have just assumed $5 and went right on, right? And that wasn't the right answer. And so I guess what we want to deal with a little bit in this course is to understand that sometimes what we think is not always true, right? And that the brain is a complicated mechanism, right? We'll get into some brain science and some things like that in this course. How much time do I have? Not much. Okay. So that was just kind of an introduction, right? And some people, once they hit 12,000,
In some cases.
And so, all I wanted was just one more. You know.
Mad about that. Put that up there now.
All right, you want? Let me give you one more, and then we'll go. This is just one off the top of my head, so I got to make sure I tell this one right because I haven't heard this one in a long time. All right. So picture we're in this room here, and on the other room next door, there are 3 light bulbs. Did I tell you this one yet? Okay. These are light switches, obviously. I'll just leave them like that. I tried to do them 3D, and it's not working for me. All right, so those are 3 light switches.
Those are like the ones over on Main Street. I'm sorry.
So the switches are in here, then.
Say what?
The switches are in here.
Yeah, the switches are in here. But you can only turn one on at a time. Okay? And then, once you've done whatever you're going to do in here, you can go in there, but only one of them can be on. And you have to be able to tell me what switch goes with which bulb. All right? So there's 3 switches and 3 bulbs. One switch goes for each bulb. You can do whatever you want right here. But when you go into the room to check, you can only have one of them in the on position. Which one do you leave on, and how do you do it? Because then when you go over there, you got to know all 3 and which one goes to which switch.
I don't think I'm understanding it.
Okay. All right, okay. So you got 3 light switches, and each one of these switches controls a bulb in the room, and you can't see it. All right?
We don't even know where the bulb's at. Is that
Yeah, so they're just on the other side. They're in this room. There's 3 things like this that have a bulb in it. And when you flip this switch, one of them's going to come on. When you flip this switch, one of them's going to come on. And when you flip this switch, another one's going to come on. When you go into the room to look, you have to have 2 of these off and one of them on. And from that, you can tell which bulb goes to which switch, all 3 of them, by having just one on when you go in there. How do you do it? Because you can do it. Actually, this is a test for how old you are. Believe it or not, the older you are, the better you do at this. Because a different part of your brain begins to emerge with age that helps you to think about problems like this differently. Right? It doesn't mean you can't figure it out. You can figure it out at any age. But I'm just telling you that this is really a test for age sometimes. You know, that typically, if you gave this test to 100 people, you would get a lot more older people that get it correct versus younger people. Well, there you go. He had an inside track.
It wasn't successful.
Well, how will you know if the switch is up?
So when you go in there, you're going to have one switch on, which means there's going to be one bulb on in there. But you have to figure out, and you can only go once, you have to figure out which switch goes to which bulb. And you can do that, but if you choose wisely.
The one that has the little green over there.
I don't want to keep you all day, but anybody other than Charles have some ideas?
No. I see. How can it doesn't matter which
Well, it does matter.
Now you're going the other way.
If,
one? Actually, I mean, if say I do the first one,
Mhm.
and I go in there and that one's on.
Right.
Either left or right belongs to the other 2 here.
Right, but which one does that one? So you've got 2 that are off and 2 other switches. Which one goes to which switch?
one that I have, the one that I have on is gonna be the one that's gonna be on over there.
Right. So say if you have this one on. Yeah, I got that part. Did you? Still stuck on 12,000. All right. All right. So let me. So you're saying if one of them's on here, then it's going to be on in the other room. That part is correct.
What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter to me in my mind
Mhm.
which one is on. Because I'll know, I remember which one was on over here. The other two will either just be my left or my right, and those will be my left or my right.
Then that could be in the
Because
same
they
order
can't.
over there.
Yeah. So this one could go to the left one. This one could go to the right one. You don't know which goes to which. Because if this one was the left one, this one was the center one, and this one was the right one, you could turn them all off and go in there and know which one was it. Say what?
Then in that case, go with the middle one.
Right, but then how do you know which one this one turns on or which one this one turns on? Because they're not connected. You know what I'm saying? This one could be the far left, or it could be the middle, or it could be this one. So if you turn on this one, you've still got two bulbs that aren't on.
Bring a friend.
No, you can't bring a friend.
Do you have to
That's how we do it at home.
No, you don't have to be.
Switch, honey, does it go on?
All right, so we got to get you guys out of here because it's a little after. Charles, how would you do it? And see if you have the same answer that I have.
I would turn one of them on,
Mm-hmm.
leave it on for a little while, turn it off, turn another one on, go over there and feel which one.
Oh, feel the heat.
Yeah.
Are you
So you leave one of them on, and it gets hot.
Yeah.
Then you turn it off, and you turn on the second one. So you know that this one is the one that's hot. This one is the one that's on over there, and this one is the one that's cold.
How do you reason that?
See, I couldn't even get myself to think.
There is a part of the brain that comes, and it comes with age, that is, it remembers experience. It remembers hands-on experience. And so it's things that, so a lot of people were trying to do like the math of it. Okay, if I have this one and that one, they're trying to figure it out in their head. There is a part of your brain that thinks about experience. What do I know about light bulbs? And that begins to come more and more with age. So typically, if you gave this test to people, you would see a clear line between older people and younger people as far as who gets this right more consistently.
I need to be able to do it with my hands, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you're flipping switches and you're hollering through the room.
Right.
the other room, which one it is? That's what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
Take the right one off, or the right one on.
Well, now you know. You just got to sit there for 5 minutes and yeah.
Don't fix the light bulb.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what. So basically what this was designed to do is to get you to think beyond just numbers and to get you to think about what are you actually dealing with? What are the properties of the thing that you're dealing with? And one of the properties is that it can become hot.